All right, so before we start going over questions from the review, the answers are posted on Canvas. One thing that I wanted to point out is, well, a couple things that I want to mention. The verifying ones, remember, there's more than one correct way to solve it, so if you did something different, that's fine. The ones at the bottom here, so 8 and 9, the answer has the plus k pi, so we didn't do that, so you can just cross those off. So the answers would be what's not the k pi. So same with the other ones too. For 9, it's not the k part. So it's just these. These are just the answers from last year, so they had those on it. So if you're checking your work with the answers, don't worry about the k part. So from the verifying, anyone specifically that you guys want to see from 1, 2, or 3? Let's do number 3. So anytime we see a trig function squared with a 1, that automatically tells us we're going to do one of our Pythagorean identities. So what is secant squared minus 1? Tangent squared. So this is tangent squared times cosecant squared. What should I do next? I can change everything to be in terms of sine and cosine. So what would cosecant be? Leah? Yeah. 1 over sine squared. What would tangent be?
Sine squared over cosine squared.
Sine squared over cosine squared. So the sine squareds cancel. When you're multiplying, you can cancel, but if you were adding, let's say we had like a sine squared plus 1 on the top and just sine squared on the bottom, you can't cancel. So you can't cancel out over addition, but you can over multiplication. So this would be 1 over cosine squared. And what should we do next? 1 over cosine squared we know is secant squared, which is our answer. So remember, the verifying part, this part, getting the same answer is not the answer. What you do in your work is the answer. So remember, your work is what your answer is, so make sure you are clear with your steps. If you're going to put work all over the page, at least like put some arrows so I know what you're going to do, where you're going next. So 8. Remember, our goal with all of these is to always get our trig function all by itself. We have a 2 inside there, so we can't do anything with the 2 yet. So our trig function's all by itself. Cosine tells us we need to look at which values? X values. So where do we have x values of negative 1/2? On our unit, 2 pi over 3? And where else? 4 pi over 3? So remember, on your quiz, you're going to get the unit circle, or on your test, you're going to get the unit circle, you're going to get the identities to help verify, and then your sum and difference formulas also. So here we have to look at our unit circle, find where the x values are negative 1/2, and that's at 2 pi over 3 and 4 pi over 3. Now the last step is we have to get rid of this 2 that's being multiplied to the x. So how do I get rid of the 2? Divide. So I'm dividing. Be careful here. A lot of people made this mistake on the quiz. When you have a fraction, you're dividing. This is dividing 2 over 1. So when you keep change flip, you're multiplying it by 1 over 2. So it should be 2 pi over 6, which simplifies to pi over 3. And then do the same thing for the second one, divide by 2. So this would be multiplying by 1 over 2, which would be 4 pi over 6, which is 2 pi over 3. So So whenever you have something directly happening to the x, you just save that for the last step and just work it out there. Logan. So at this step, we know that 2 goes into 4 2 times, so you can cross those out, so 2 pi over 3. Or if you multiply it out, then you can just divide by a common factor. So I want to get my trig function all by itself. What do I have to do first? Subtract 3. So I have tangent squared is equal to 1. What do I do next? Square root. So tangent of x is equal to plus or minus 1. Awesome. So on my unit circle, tangent is what? What values am I looking for with tangent? Y over x. So I'm looking for y over x values. So I need to see where my y over x values are positive 1 and negative 1. So what would that be? Three pi over 4. What else? Pi over 4. Anything else? Pi over 4?
I think so.
I already said that one.
Oh, sorry.
Pi over 4, 3 pi over 4,
No, 5 pi over 4.
5 pi over 4,
And 7 pi over 4.
and 7 pi over 4.
So it's plus or minus 1.
Yeah, because it's plus or minus 1. So we're looking for the positive 1 and the negative 1. So these are our 4 answers. So looking at number 9, we want to get our trig function all by itself. So I'm going to add 1 to both sides. So I have 2 sine of 3 theta is equal to 1. Divide by 2. So sine of 3 theta is equal to 1/2. Once my sine is all by itself, I go to the unit circle. So sine tells me I look at which values?
Y.
Y values. So I'm looking at where my y value is 1/2. So I have 3 theta is equal to, where's my y value 1/2?
5 pi over 6.
5 pi over 6 and pi over 6.
Yeah.
So I'm not done yet because I have that 3 that's being multiplied to theta. So what I need to do to get rid of the 3 is divide. Be careful when dividing. This is like dividing 3 over 1. So keep change flip, it becomes 1 over 3. So this would be 5 pi over 18. Same thing here, divide by 3. So multiply by 1 over 3, it would be pi over 18. So these are our 2 answers. So looking at 11, if we have a trig function squared and another trig function and a number, it tells us we have to do what? Factor. How do I factor when my first number is not 1?
First and last.
Multiply the first times the last. So 2 times negative 1, negative 2. And what are 2 factors of negative 2 that add to negative 1? Negative 2 and positive 1. Perfect. So here I'll have cosine minus 2 and cosine plus 1. What do I have to do next? Awesome. Since I started by multiplying, I have to remember to divide. So this will be cosine minus 1 and cosine 2 cosine plus 1. What do I do next?
Set them both equal to 0.
Set them both equal to 0. So just like I would when I solve when factoring. So I have cosine of x minus 1 is equal to 0. 2 cosine of x plus 1 is equal to 0. In the first equation, what should I do?
Add 1.
Add 1. So cosine of x is equal to 1. The second one, I subtract 1 and divide by 2. So cosine of x is equal to negative 1/2. Cosine tells me I have to look at which values? X values. So where is my x value positive 1?
0.
At 0. So if x is equal to 0.
So 5 over
So then let's look, where are my x values? -1/2. What was it, Lily? 2 pi over 3. And anywhere else? 4 pi over 3. So for the solving questions on the test, all the questions will say on the interval from 0 to 2 pi. So that just means one trip around the circle. So it's just like what we've been doing in class. Every question will say on this interval, so you don't have to worry about going around more than once. It's just one trip around the circle. Where are your x values? 1. Where are your x values? -1/2. So just one trip around the circle.
So you don't worry about putting 2 pi.
No, because it'll be like this. So 0 is included and 2 pi is not.
Yep.
So that's why here it wouldn't be 0/2 pi, because 2 pi is not included, because 0 is, because they're the same thing. So let's look at 14. So here we have a sine squared and a cosine. What do we need to do first?
Simplify the sine square.
What do you mean simplify?
Should change it.
Change it to cosine.
Yeah.
So we want all of our trig functions to be the same. So I'm going to change sine squared to be cosine. I'm going to use my identity, sine squared plus cosine squared is equal to 1. So I know sine squared is going to be equal to 1 minus cosine squared. So I'm going to plug 1 minus cosine squared into sine squared. So I have -2 times 1 minus cosine squared plus 3 cosine. This uses theta, but I'm just going to use x. It doesn't matter. It's the same, just a different variable. What do I have to do next? Distribute -2. So I have -2 plus 2 cosine squared x plus 3 cosine plus 3 equals 0. What's next?
Combine like that.
Combine like terms. So I have this -2 plus 3, which would be 1. So 2 cosine squared plus 3 cosine plus 1. Now I can factor. So what do I have to do first to factor this? Awesome. Since I start with a number that's not 1, I have to multiply the first and the last. So this would be 2. What are 2 factors of 2 that add to 3? 2 and 1. So I have cosine plus 2 and cosine plus 1. What do I have to do next? Divide by 2. Since I started by multiplying, don't forget to divide. So cosine of x plus 1 is equal to 0, and 2 cosine plus 1 is equal to 0. I need to solve both of these for cosine. So subtract 1, so I get cosine of x is equal to -1. Cosine of x is equal to -1/2. Cosine, I have to look at what values? X values. So I have to look at the x values. Where are my x values on my unit circle? -1. Pi. Anywhere else? Nope. And then do the same thing for the second equation. Cosine tells me I look at the x values. So where are my x values on my unit circle? -1/2.
2 pi over 3, 4 pi over 3.
2 pi over 3 and 4 pi over 3. So these are my answers. So what are 2 numbers that add up to 195? 2 numbers on the unit circle that add up to 195.
150, 45.
150 and 45. So my u is going to be 150 and my v is going to be 45. So the formula that I plug it into is going to be tangent of u, so tangent of 150, plus tangent of v, which is 45, over, is it 1 minus?
Yeah, it's 1 minus tangent, your tangent b.
Tangent of 150 times tangent of 45. So tangent on my unit circle tells me I need to look at what values?
Y over x.
Y over x. So tangent is y over x. So at 150, what is y over x?
150 y over x. 1/2 over negative square root 3 over 2.
So 1/2 over negative square root 3 over 2. I keep change flip, so keep the top, change multiplication, flip the bottom. The 2's cancel, so this would be negative 1 over square root 3.
Can you do negative square root
Would
3
you
over 2?
rationalize already?
This one?
Yeah, because it's root 2 over 2 over root 2 over 2.
Okay.
But do you have to rationalize for these though, or?
But just make sure you don't have like a fraction in your fraction still. So we would probably have to keep change flip as we go. So I'm going to just change 1, because tangent of 45 we said was 1. So I'm going to change it to square root 3 over square root 3. And then combine these on the top. So it's negative 1 plus square root 3 over square root 3. So that's the top. Now on the bottom, I have 1 minus. Tangent of 150 is negative 1 over square root 3. And tangent of 45 is 1. So then I have 1 plus 1 over square root 3. I'm going to change this 1 to be square root 3 over square root 3. So here I have square root 3 plus 1 over square root 3. Keep change flip. So keep the top, change to multiplication, flip the bottom. Square root 3 plus 1. Square root 3's cancel, so then you end up with negative 1 plus square root 3 over square root 3 plus 1. So if you rationalized from the start, your answer may look a little different, which I don't remember how the answer key looks for this one, if I rationalized here or not.
This one you did. Well, it's.
Let's do 18. All right, so here we have pi over 6 and pi over 4. I know that these are both on my unit circle, so if you want to, you can convert them to degrees, but you'll see both of these on the unit circle, so you don't have to convert. But pi over 6 would be 30 degrees. Pi over 4 is 45, correct? Okay, yeah. So if you wanted to convert, you can, but you'll see these exactly on the unit circle. If you had something that was, let's say, like 11 pi over 4, and we converted this, so I would have to multiply by 180 over pi. Pi's cancel. 4 goes into 180 45 times. So this will be 495 degrees. If you have something that is not on your unit circle, you have to subtract 360 until you get something on the unit circle. So this would be 190, 135. So keep subtracting 360 until you get something on the unit circle. You got to find a coterminal angle. You can't do something that is not on the unit circle. But these two are, so we're good to go. So my cosine formula is cosine u times cosine v plus sine u sine v. Is that right?
Yeah.
Sine u sine v. Be careful, especially with your cosine ones, when writing down the formula. Don't make a mistake, because copying down the formula is going to be the easiest part. Be careful with what you write down, okay? When it's negative, it's a plus in the middle. So you get the formulas. You don't even have to remember them. Just make sure you are careful with writing it down on your paper. Cosine tells us we have to look at which value, x or y? X. And sine is y. So at cosine, our u is pi over 6. So at pi over 6, what's our x value? Square root 3 over 2. At pi over 4, what's our x value? Square root 2 over 2. Then we have plus. At sine of pi over 6, what's our sine value at pi over 6? So what's the y value at pi over 6? 1/2. And what's the y value at pi over 4? Root 2 over 2. So when multiplying, we multiply straight across. So we get square root 6 over 4. Multiply straight across. Square root 2 over 4. And then we can just add them together. So square root 6 plus square root 2 over 4. All right, so for these types of questions, we kind of have to work backwards. We have to see what formula does this look like. So it's tangent, so we know it's going to be one of the tangent ones. Is it tangent u plus v or u minus v? U minus v. So this looks like our tangent u minus v. What's our u here? 100, and what's our v? 70. So we would plug those in. So we have tangent of 100 minus 70, which is tangent of 30. So these questions will say, write each expression as sine, cosine, and tangent. This is writing the expression as sine, cosine, or tangent. Tangent of 30. But then we have to find the exact value. So tangent, we know, is what over what? Y over x. So at 30 degrees, what's y over x?
1 over square root of
2.
1/2 over square root 3 over 2. Then we keep change flip. Should be times 2 over square root 3. And then the 2's cancel, so this is 1 over square root 3. And then if we rationalize, it would be square root 3 over 3. So this is one part of your answer, tangent of 30. The other part is actually finding what the tangent of 30 is, which is square root 3 over 3. All right, so 13. So I have a cosine squared and a sine. They're different. I can't factor unless they're the same. So what should I do?
Substitute cosine squared for 1 minus sine squared.
So I know sine squared plus cosine squared is equal to 1. So cosine squared is going to be equal to 1 minus sine squared. So I have 2 times 1 minus sine squared x plus 3 sine x minus 3. What should I do next? Distribute the 2. So 2 minus 2 sine squared plus 3 sine minus 3 equals 0. What's next?
Add the 2 and -3.
Combine like terms. So I have 2 minus 3, which would be -1. So -2 sine squared plus 3 sine. This would be -1 equals 0.
And we factor.
Before I factor, I don't like it when my squared term is negative. So I'm going to divide everything by -1. So just change the sign of everything. So essentially I'm pulling out a -1, but 0 divided by -1 is still 0. So I can divide everything by -1. So this is 2 sine squared minus 3 plus 1. So just change the sign of everything. I like it a little bit better when my sign squared is positive, so just take out a negative.
You could still do it like with the negative.
Yes, but you just have to be careful with your signs if you do that. Because then you would have to divide by -2. So you just have to be careful. All right, what should I do next? How do I factor this? Multiply the first times the last, so 2 times 1 is 2. What are 2 factors of 2 that add to -3?
3 -1.
Wait, oh yeah, you're right.
Factors of 2 that add to -3.
Oh, I did 2 and -1.
-2 and -1. So this is sine minus 2, sine minus 1. What do I have to do next? Do what?
Divide by 2.
Divide by 2. Since I started by multiplying, I have to remember to divide. So this is sine of x minus 1 is equal to 0.
You only divide from the last part?
Yeah, just the numbers.
Yeah.
And then if it doesn't go in, we just move it in front of that sign.
Can Juan Ortega report student services? Juan Ortega, please report student services.
So now we do the same thing that we did before, but we just have 2 separate equations. So I'm going to add 1 to both sides. We are isolating our trig function, so sine of x is equal to 1. Here I add 1 to both sides and divide by 2, so sine of x is equal to 1/2. So sine tells me I have to look at which value on my unit circle?
One.
The y values. So where is my y value? 1. Pi over 2. Is that it?
Yeah.
Yep. And then sine of x is my y values also. So where is my y value 1/2? Pi over 6 and 5 pi over 6. So these are the 3 answers. All right, so 17. Usually I would want to convert these to figure out what degrees they are, so to see if it's over 360 or not, but these are both on our unit circle. If you want to convert them, pi over 3 is 60 degrees, and pi over 4 is 45 degrees. But pi over 3 and pi over 4 are both on our unit circle, so you don't really need to convert them. If it was something like, let's say we had 11 pi over 4. 11 pi over 4 is not on our unit circle, so I would want to convert it to degrees to see what measure it is. So how do I convert it to degrees? Multiply by 180 over pi, so the pi's cancel. 4 goes into 180 45 times, and 45 times 11 is 495. No, you guys do not get a calculator, but you can write it down. 45 times 11, multiply it. The reason why this one's different is because 11 pi over 4 isn't on the unit circle. 495 degrees also isn't on our unit circle. So what do we need to do if we have something that's more than 360?
Minus 360.
Subtract 360 from it. So then this would be 135, which this would be 2 things that we could find on our unit circle. Yeah.
Would there be one where it would be
So here we have 2 things that are on our unit circle, so we don't need to do that. We have the sine and we're subtracting. So our sine formula, are you sure? Sine u cosine v minus cosine u sine v. When I was in high school, I had to remember them.
really?
Yeah, but it's been a long time since I was in high school, so I don't remember them anymore. Yeah. All right, so our u is pi over 3 and our v is pi over 4. So sine of pi over 3 times cosine of pi over 4 minus cosine of pi over 3 times sine of pi over 4. Sine, we have to look at which value on our unit circle?
Y.
The y values. And cosine, we're looking at which one? X values. So at pi over 3, what's the coordinate at pi over 3? So both the x and the y. What's the coordinate at pi over 4? Square root 2 over 2? Square root 2 over 2? Yes. maybe?
Yeah.
Okay. So the y value at this one's pi over 3 would be square root 3 over 2. The x value at pi over 4 would be square root 2 over 2. Cosine value would be the x1 at pi over 3 would be 1/2. And the y value at pi over 4 is square root 2 over 2. When multiplying, just multiply straight across. So square root 3 times square root 2 would be square root 6 over 4 minus square root 2 over 4. And then we can subtract these. It would be square root 6 minus square root 2 over 4. Which formula do we have that goes sine, cosine, minus cosine, sine?
So it's
That
like
is your sign.
the sine of 3
Sine.
plus 15.
Of u minus v. Our u is 315 and our v is 15. So this would be sine of 315 minus 15.
So sign of 300.
So sine of 300. So that's our first part. Now we have to evaluate the sine of 300. So sine tells us we look at which,
Y.
the y. So at 300 degrees, what's our y value? Square root 3 over 2? Negative square root 3 over 2? Any other questions here?
That's it?
Yep. All right, so looking at 22.
Oh, Ms. Carver, quick question.
Yes.
On the test, is it gonna say like your u is greater than?
Good question. So it could say lies in quadrant 1, or it could say from 0 to pi over 2. Pi over 2. So you have the unit circle with you, so use your unit circle. It has 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2. So just look at your quadrants and see which one it is. So if it doesn't tell you quadrant 1, it's just one extra step to tell that this is in quadrant 1. So it may give you the interval like this, or it may say quadrant 1. All right, so sine is what over what?
3 over 5, so y over r.
Y over r. So we need to find what our x is. Y we know is 3, r is 5. I'm in quadrant 1. So y is 3, x we need to find out, and r is 5. How do I find x? Pythagorean Theorem. So 3 squared plus x squared equals 5 squared. So 9 plus x squared is equal to 25. What's x? 4. Is it a positive 4 or negative 4? Positive. We're going in the right direction, so x is positive. So this is all of the information we need for this one's alpha. Instead of u or v, it gives you alpha and beta here. So this is alpha. Now we'll find beta. So again, it gives us sine. Sine is what over what? Y over r. Does the negative go with the y or with the r?
The y.
The negative goes with the y because r is never negative. So we need to know what x is. We know y is negative 12 and r is 13. I'm in quadrant 3 this time. So 1, 2, 3 would be down here. Y is negative 12, r is 13. How do I find what x is? Pythagorean Theorem. So x squared plus negative 12 squared is equal to 13. So what's x equal to? This is 169 minus 144, so 25. So x is 5. Is it a positive 5 or a negative 5?
It is a negative 5, it's in quadrant 3.
It's in quadrant 3. X goes to the left, so x is a negative 5. So this is our information for beta. Now we can go back to the question that it asked us. We have to find cosine of alpha plus beta. So our equation where we're adding them is cosine of alpha cosine beta minus sine alpha sine beta. So cosine is what over what?
Wait, is that alpha? Just like,
It's just like u and v, but they just gave us different variables here.
oh, so nothing changed.
Nothing changed. So cosine is x over r, and sine is y over r. So looking at our alpha triangle here, what's x? 4 over 5.
Yep. And
And then looking at our beta triangle,
negative 5 over 13.
negative 5 over 13. Then we have minus. Sine of alpha is y over r, so sine is 3 over 5. And then sine of beta, so we're looking at beta triangle now, which is
Negative 12 over 13.
negative 12 over 13. So when multiplying, multiply straight across. 4 times negative 5 is negative 20 over 5 times 13, which is 65. 3 times negative 12 is 36, negative 36 over 5 times 13, which is 65. This becomes a plus, so we're adding. So this is 16 over 65. Be careful when doing the math. You guys don't have a calculator for tomorrow. The numbers won't be terribly high. Nothing you can't figure it out. So if you don't know what 13 times 13 is, write it down and multiply. Okay? Just be careful when doing the math. All right, so 23. First thing we have is sine of theta. Sine is what over what? Y over r. Does the negative go with the y or with the r? It goes with the y because r is never negative. So I need to find out what my x is. Y is negative 4. R is 5. So I have a coordinate plane here. I'm in quadrant 3. So the third quadrant over here. Y is negative 4. R is 5. How do I find x? Pythagorean Theorem.
Is it always going to tell us what quadrants in, or are you going to have to do the...
It could say from pi to, this would be 3 pi over 2. So it could say like this. But remember, you have the unit circle, so you can just look at the unit circle, which one's which. So we have 4 squared plus x squared is equal to 5 squared. So this is 25 minus 16. So x squared is 9. X is equal to 3. Is it a positive 3 or a negative 3? How do we know it's a negative 3? Right. Because quadrant 3 only tangents positive. Also, we're going to the left on our coordinate plane. So that's where the negative x values go. So negative 3.
It's hard. Like, that's like the one part that I don't. Like, I get.
So let's say I had the point negative 3, negative 4. Negative 3, I have to go to the left because it's negative. And I would go down because it's negative 4. So it'd be there. So if you're going to the left, your x value is negative. If you're going down, your y value is negative. If it was up here, x value would be positive. No, x value would be negative because you're going to the left. Y value is positive. Y is positive.
So you can look at your x and y values to figure that out?
Yeah, just think about it as like a coordinate plane where you would plot your point. Okay, so this is our theta triangle. Now let's do the same thing for our x triangle here. So again, it's sine. Sine is what over what? Y over r. So I need to figure out what x is, y and r. Y is 12, r is 13. and I'm in quadrant 2. So y goes up and down, that's 12. R is 13, I have to find x. So Pythagorean Theorem, 13 squared is equal to x squared plus 12 squared. So 169 minus 144 is 25. So x is 5. Is it positive 5 or negative 5? If I'm going to the left,
-5.
it's negative 5.
What do you mean going to the left, isn't it? Just because it's on that line. It's
Well, because these are my x values. If I was going to the right, if it was in quadrant 1, it would be positive. But I'm going to the left, so x has to be negative. So x is negative 5. So this is my x triangle. Okay, now it asks me to find sine of theta minus x. So instead of using u and v, it just uses theta and x, but it's the same thing. We use our formula here. So sine, let's see if I can remember it this time. We have sine of theta times cosine of x minus cosine theta sine of x. Right? Hopefully. Maybe. All right, so now we plug in. Sine, we know, is y over r. Cosine is x over r. So cosine is x over r, and sine is y over r. So sine of theta, we're looking at this one. Y is -4, and r is 5. Cosine of x, we're looking at this triangle, the pink one. So x is -5, and r is 13. Minus cosine theta, so we're looking at our theta triangle. Cosine is x over r, so -3 over 5. And sine of x, so we're back to our x triangle. Sine is y over r, so 12 over 13. Now we multiply and subtract. So multiply straight across. -4 times -5 is 20. 5 times 13 is 65. Here we have a negative and a negative, so it's going to become a plus. 3 times 12 is 36. Over 5 times 13 is 65. So 20 plus 36 is 56 over 65. Be careful when multiplying. So first thing we want to do is isolate our trig function. So what do I need to do?
Subtract 3 and then divide by 3. So
Subtract 3.
Tangent x over 2 is equal to -1.
One step at a time. But yes, so we get equals -3, then divide 3. So this is tangent of x over 2 is equal to -1.
And multiply by 2.
We don't multiply by 2 yet. We have to find out what
Oh, I forgot about that part.
tangent is y over x. So we have to find where y over x is -1. And then we get x over 2 is equal to that. So where is y over x -1?
3 pi over 4 instead of pi over 4.
3 pi over 4.
I think I'm right. 3 pi over 4.
So 3 pi over 4 and 7 pi over 4. And then we have to do the last step, which is what's directly happening to x. So we multiply both sides by 2. So this would be 6 pi over 4, which simplifies to 3 pi over 2. And then same thing here, multiply both sides by 2. So this would be 14 pi over 4, which is 7 pi over 2.
Basically,
So step 1 is isolate our trig function here. It's already isolated. So tangent is what over what? Y over x. So I'm looking at y over x values where they are 1. So on my unit circle, if I put y over x, this would be 1 at pi over 4. 3 pi over 4 would be -1, so that doesn't work. But then 5 pi over 4 works. So here I get x over 3 is equal to pi over 4. And x over 3 is equal to 5 pi over 4. what do I have to do next?
Solve for x.
Yes, solve for x by multiplying 3. So the 3's cancel. So I get x is equal to 3 pi over 4. Multiply by 3. X is equal to 15 pi over 4. So these are the two answers.